Hi there. So FiberLine is a spin out of Stanford University, and we're part of the StartX community as well. And a few years ago, we won the MedTech Innovator Award too. So those are some of the things you're seeing there. But above those little icons is a picture of the lymphatic system. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that in the next couple of charts, but it's a pretty critical part of the immunity system. And we're out to treat secondary lymphedema, both treating and preventing it. The company is at an early commercial stage. We've had over 200 surgeries conducted outside the clinical studies of use cases of people getting treated for lymphedema. We have 3 ongoing clinical studies going in the US, one in Europe, and one that just started in Japan. Have over 30 publications based on our technology, and we have 33 patents in 8 different patent families that we've gone forward with. And regulatory-wise, we have our initial 510(k) clearance. We have a CE mark for surgical treatment of lymphedema as a Class 3 device. We have ISO 13485 certification as well, and we're currently going through the process for Japan with PMDA and also for regulatory approval in Korea. If you're not familiar with lymphedema, these are some more extreme pictures of this, but this unfortunately is an outcome in Western countries, most commonly after cancer surgery, where if cancer is spread to the lymph nodes and lymph nodes have to be dissected and removed with radiation, it can cause a pooling in the affected limb. And that lymphatic system I showed in the first chart, about 3 liters of fluid that goes through that a day. And if it gets impaired, the pooling can occur in the limb itself. It can obviously, these are more extreme cases, but it can cause a lot of disfigurement, heaviness of the limb, fibrosis and pain and discomfort, but it also compromises the immunity system. So there's big issues around infections and other complications from that because the lymph fluid is not getting flushed out. Worldwide, there's about 15 million cancer-related cases. Numbers can be higher than that as well, too. But the biggest problem right now is there's no cure for it. The most common form of treatment right now is actually using compression management. And it's a big problem, I think, in women's health because about 2/3 of the cancer-related cases are related to lymphedema. Unfortunately, 2 out of 10 women will develop breast cancer in their lifetime. Of those, 1 out of 5 will develop breast cancer-related lymphedema. And there's, in cases where people have a higher risk of getting later stage cancers and such, there's even a higher risk of closer to 1 out of 3 people that develop that. As I mentioned, the compression management is really the primary care right now, which is literally pushing the fluid out of the limb itself so some other collateral lymphatics can collect that. It's a time-consuming, ongoing, rest of life type of treatment because it's only treating the symptom of the disease and not the cause of it. And often for the patients, it requires a lot of out-of-pocket expenses as well. Our product looks rather modest, but it's a thread-like scaffold that took 3 years of development at Stanford to optimize the nanostructure to get the right performance for it. But essentially, it's an implant that promotes and directs the formation of new lymphatic vessels. And it looks like a piece of suture as far as the dimensions of the form factors, but what it has is aligned nanofibrils of collagen that helps to promote the direction and the formation of these scaffolds. It's a very porous structure. This is an example of the cross-section of it. And what we find is endothelial cells like it, they get attached on it, they elongate, and they start to form vessels along the scaffold as they do that. And after the vessels have been formed, the scaffolds get fully resorbed in about 6 to 9 months. So it gets implanted, and it's there just long enough to complete its function. We have 2 different targets that we're looking for use cases. One is treating people that have lymphedema, so we're literally bridging across the damaged lymphatic vessels to form new lymphatic vessels and to reestablish or reconnect the lymphatic system. And we're looking at using it as a prophylactic treatment to prevent lymphedema from developing. These are both large market opportunities. When we look at just the US and Europe as far as total addressable market, it's a significant opportunity. The target here is really going after plastic surgeons who are doing reconstruction surgery, and with a subspecialty in microsurgery as well. And that's where we've started our clinical experience. On the prevention side, just looking at breast cancer and just looking at US and Europe alone, about 700,000 new cases a year. And just for the product, the total addressable market is about $2 billion per year going forward. And in this case, our goal is to become the standard of care and working with breast oncologists to use this as an implantation device. So up to date, we've actually had over 200 cases to date that have been treated. The first one was at Stanford, and this is a good example of the kind of experience we're seeing. Right limb was about 50% larger than her left limb after breast cancer-related lymphedema. And after the surgery, it reduced down to less than a 10% difference. and the skin is back to being normal and soft configuration. And this was actually 3 years after the surgery, still seeing the same results from this. This is what it looks like in the limb before the surgery, is that there's a large amount of pooling of fluid, creating a dermal backflow. That's what's causing the limb to be so large. And then 15 months later, the same limb, you're seeing these new lymphatic vessels that formed right along our BioBridge scaffolding. We have a lot of examples of cases where people have gotten some kind of microsurgery to address lymphedema and had some response to that, but then after putting BioBridge in a second surgery, they can get down to normalized limb volumes. In fact, this has been published by Dr. Wen at Stanford and her group as far as the research they've done with a retrospective study showing complete normalization of limb volumes. We have cases in lower limb as well. This is a gentleman in his 70s had melanoma that developed a lymphedema in his right leg, and then after the surgery showed the improvements that occurred from that. We're selling this as a single sterile pack of 5 devices that can be used for surgery, high margin, high value opportunity. We have surgeries now conducted in 10 different countries, and we're engaging KOLs throughout US and Europe as well. And right now, we're the only medical device approved for surgical treatment of lymphedema. We have a clinical study that's going on right now at University of Chicago, that's funded by the National Cancer Institute. That's about half enrolled at this point. And Stanford and MD Anderson are additional sites for that. We have a preventative study that's completed enrollment in Europe with women that have breast cancer that are at risk of getting lymphedema, and we're using the BioBridge as a prophylactic treatment. And we have another study that's just started in January that our partner Terumo has funded, that we'll be using for going through PMDA approval. One example to look at is the prevention approaches that are being used to try to prevent lymphedema. There's a very aggressive microsurgery that's being used by a lot of cancer centers. They've been able to show they can reduce lymphedema from about a 33% risk case down to about 10% doing that procedure. But it also has a lot of complications associated with that because it extends the surgery time by a lot. And we're looking at using BioBridge, which only adds a few minutes to the surgery. It doesn't require additional surgeon to be involved in the process. And in fact, Stanford is starting a preventative study, investigator-initiated study on their own to address that. We are located in Union City, California. We have a GMP production facility we've put in place there that's been in production for 2 years now at small scale, and we're now expanding to 10x production, and it's all under 13485 certification. A small team of 7 full-time people in the US and 2 part-time people that have driven it through this process, and with a very seasoned group of people, multidisciplinary team to make this happen, because it really is an advanced materials development. We've been able to do a lot of this because we have a really great network of collaborators and advisors that have been helping us through this process. So we're looking to raise $10 million, and that's going to take us to the end of 2024. And at that point, we think we'll be ready for an M&A deal, and we'll have our clinical studies completed by then, and a lot of the other key points in place as well, too. So that's what we're doing. We're really focused specifically on lymphedema and treating secondary lymphedema. But where we're going to go in the future with this is quite interesting. There's been a lot of research done in the last 10 or 15 years about the meningolymphatics that are located in the skull and what role they play in neurological diseases when the lymphatics get degraded. Strong correlation between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. And there's a lot of interest now in taking our technology we're using for secondary lymphedema and see if we can help in these modalities to address this disease. That's a quick summary. If anyone's interested in talking more, I'm available afterwards, but we feel like we're well poised to really go after this significant unmet need as a market. And we have a strong IP position in place to protect us as we go forward with that. And we're looking at additional applications we can take it forward. So thank you.